Hey folks, it's Chris with the Human Project Podcast. We are starting a new series about dating. What are Christian and biblical principles for dating? What's God's design? What's God's intent in order for us to be intentional, which is what we're going to be talking about today, in how we select and choose and partner with and explore all of these things that are wrapped up in this complicated thing we call dating. So take a listen. As Mark and I talk about this, we'll talk about our own experiences with dating, some of us more years ago than others, but excited to hear what you think. Let us know in the comments, share or email us other things that you'd like for us to talk about with this dating type conversation. Thanks, and let's dive into the episode. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
I'm well today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm excited and nervous for this topic that got brought up by one of our listeners.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. Because we are super qualified to talk about this.
Very eminently.
Yes. It is this topic of how do you successfully date as a believer?
Whoa.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear all your thoughts on that, and I will just sit here and listen.
So, back when I started dating, we would write letters to each other. And they would be sent via horse carrier.
Right. Did you chisel them in stone?
Yeah. Well, it's actually really funny. So Victoria and I, we do a weekly date night every Wednesday. Victoria is my wife, for those of you that don't know.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Not a different Victoria.
Okay. Yeah.
But Victoria and I do a weekly date night. And it's funny, we went on a date this week and we were having dinner. And something got brought up. Oh, so a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in a long time reached out to me via Facebook Messenger. And I'm like, never on Facebook. And so I thought it was super weird. And I still haven't responded to him because I just remembered Wednesday. And now I just remembered again that I still haven't responded to him. But that was actually how I asked Victoria out for our first date, was over Facebook Messenger.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hip and cool.
That's dating, the dating time frame as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were debating about the fact that whether or not I used the phrase awesome sauce in my initial reaching out to her.
Oh, man.
Because
As in you are awesome sauce? I mean, how would you have used that?
I use that as like great or sweet. I would say awesome sauce back in the day. And thankfully I've lost that habit. But Victoria and I met because they were trying to, some of her friends were trying to set her up with one of my friends.
Okay.
And he didn't know about it. She didn't know about it. So it didn't really take off. But I started talking to Victoria.
Yeah.
Just as friends, getting to know her. She was involved in Young Life, which is an awesome ministry. And I was looking at how do I get more involved in a ministry. And so we started talking just about that and we hit it off and it was good and built a really good friendship in community with other people and got to know each other in the larger group setting, on a more personal setting. And then eventually we started being really intentional and saying, yes, let's date and let's get to know each other. Like that. So that was how our story progressed. And we've been married it'll be 9 years in October.
Nice.
So
Yeah. Coming up here.
Yeah. How about you and Christine?
So I was, I haven't asked many girls out historically. Okay. Several, but not a lot. It was pretty risky as far as my brain was concerned. But I did ask her roommate out and she politely declined and invited me instead to like a group date kind of thing. And Christine was part of the group that was there. We were both going to what was called at the time Campus Crusade for Christ, Crew, as it would be called now. And so that's how we just started to get to know each other. We started to just hang out, spend time together, built a strong friendship. And then we got more and more interested in spending more time together. And at the time, there was this concept floating around Christian circles from this book, Kiss Dating Goodbye. Not going to call myself a huge proponent of it, but one of the, I'll just remove judgment labels from it. Just, this is what happened. We didn't officially date for a long time. And I was basically interviewing her. I'm a little embarrassed to say I was interviewing her.
Hold on. Let's explore that, because I just picture you.
No, I don't want any more details about this.
Holding a clipboard and saying, "Oh, please tell me about your previous work history."
All right. So what's my work nickname?
Question mark.
Right. So that's exactly what was going on here. Except the longer it went on, the more it felt like an interview to her. I think I wasn't like setting out to go like, okay, so tonight we're going to talk about these 3 topics. It wasn't quite that formal per se. But being as curious as I am, I was just exploring things that were really important, I felt, to me and to in marriage. And so that we talked about that for a long time, those types of topics. But to me, that was a precursor to us being able to say we're dating, which I wouldn't recommend the approach at that level. What I did.
Congratulations, you passed on to the second round of the interview process. We've selected your name amongst several applicants, and we'll be in touch if we're...
Don't call us, we'll call you. That was... It came to the spot where, as mild-mannered as Christine is, and even more so that she was at the time, she finally looked at me and kind of set a boundary. She's like, I can't keep talking about these deep, vulnerable, heartfelt things. And we're just friends. Like we need to have some sort of deeper commitment if we're going to be talking about this level of things. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
So that's how we started dating. We've been married for over 25 years. I have to do the math here. Sorry. 1996 to 2024.
It's 28.
28. There you go. Almost 30. Thank you, man.
Wow.
28 years already as of last May.
There you go. And you guys are a very cute couple together. I think you still have many people tell you that.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason I lead off with that is the question we got is, how do we practice dating in a way that is honoring to who God is and what we are about as believers and people that are following Jesus? And so I wanted to lead off with our stories to say, we've been there, but not for a while.
Yeah.
So take what we say with a grain of salt, but also know that we got to an approach that worked.
Yeah.
And the success is there.
Right.
And I think that's ultimately when people are dating, for the most part, if they're doing it with the intention of to marry, that's what success looks like for a lot of people. So I think there's a couple challenges that would be good for us to address first, and then we can get into the how or some tips or practices. I think one is the intentionality factor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's, the 2 ditches kind of analogy we can use here, and trying to find the balance in there. Because of course, what I just described with the kiss dating goodbye is to elevate dating practically to engagement. I mean, in practicality, that was what was being proposed at that spot. And it was very close to what Christine and I ended up. I mean, by the time we said, let's date, that's how serious it was. I don't necessarily suggest that, by the way. I think that's a little far. The other side of that, of course, is a lack of intentionality and just a super casual approach to things that probably is also an error, right? And also has flaws on the other end of the spectrum. So something in between those two from a form of intentionality, I would say would be a good balance.
Yeah.
How did that work out for you all?
It was very similar.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I've shared this with you. So this is going to come across as super, super dorky, but it worked for Victoria and I, because I was coming out of a divorce, actually. So I'd been married before Victoria, lots and lots of lessons, lots and lots of hurt.
Yeah.
That was there from that. Lots of things I wanted to change about myself as a result of that. And so I was really nervous as Victoria and I started dating. She knew the past and she and I had talked about it. But I held it with a really, really tight intentionality. Like, I didn't even know whether marriage was in the cards for me again or not.
Okay.
But I knew I really enjoyed being around Victoria. I knew she held my heart really, really well. And we were able to talk about very, very deep things. And so when we here's the dorky part. When we decided to start dating, we went on a date, we recreated like our first date and did a couple other fun things. And I wrote her a letter, like talking through like my intentionality and all of that. And I asked her, yes, this is going to sound super cheesy. I'm like, will you be my girlfriend? At the end of the letter with like the like second grade boxes, check yes or check no.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah, that's how dorky it was. Yeah.
Little hearts drawn on it.
Basically. Yeah. But that was just like us. And thankfully she said yes. But at that point we're like, we had talked about like, would marriage be in the cards? Like, is that a possibility? If so, let's continue to pursue this.
Yeah.
It was, I would not have used the word interview, but we were checking to see like, are we in alignment together? Are we in mission together? And as we started getting closer and closer before we got engaged, we started talking about like, what does our life look like together? How would we see that playing out? Because on the intentionality side, as you start to get to know people more, you need to know what are the possibilities for you? Where do you see alignment happening and where are there risks for misalignment? And Mark Jones likes to say, the only reason to get married, and he says it a little bit as a punch, the only reason to get married is that you're more effective on mission together than you are separately. And so I think that's held very true for us with Victoria and I, with Living Church, with EMI, with the Human Project, that we've been able to do that together. Yes. And kids. Absolutely.
Huge ministry. Mission. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll set kids aside for the moment because, well, maybe not. Dating is a really important question to ask. It is. Yeah. Kids in the picture for people.
Yeah. I think I emphasize and highlight and underline and bold what Mark Jones says there. That is exactly how Christine and I were looking at it as well. Is God calling us to do be on mission together, right? And is that going to be more effective together than separate? Yeah. There's not a definitive answer to that. That's more of a posture.
Yes. Yeah.
Of looking at the situation, more of a perspective of looking at the situation, instead of what can I get out of it? And certainly that's an aspect of it. I'm not trying to say there's nothing in there about that, but instead of just what can I get out of it, is how might God be bringing us together and knitting us together? Because that's marriage. I mean, it is an elevated thing. Go all the way back to Genesis, where God describes marriage, and he uses this in this word in Hebrew, echad. It's a really important word in Hebrew. It's translated as one in English, and the two will become one. It's also the same word that's used in one of the most famous prayers or statements of faith, really, in the Bible, which is the Shema. The Lord our God is one. Yeah. It's the same Hebrew word. There's a knit togetherness that is really important there. And so I think that's a really good perspective and question to ask. Is God knitting us together for his kingdom purposes? Again, that's not an exclusive question. I just think the other questions tend to be easier to consider and more culturally normative for us to be asking. And this one is not as much so. So it's probably worth emphasizing.
I think that addresses the intentionality from the casual side. I think something like don't just be casual about it. Know what your aim is. Know what your intention is. Know what is possible, and start to weed things out there. I think on the other side of it, like we can. I'm going to say this and then see if I agree with it.
Okay.
We can approach it too intentionally. Where it's like, okay, I'm going to evaluate people, and that's exactly what's happening. Is I'm evaluating people. Like, can I get married to this person? And like, you can't just do that. Without. Well, in our culture, you can't just do that without getting to know the person,
right,
first, and then see where there's alignment.
I think there's even a hidden assumption inside of that. That this is more like, as I like to say sometimes, we're treating it like it's a math problem, right? Is this person and me do we do this as a math problem and that equals something that is what I want? And I think the reality of a relationship actually is that God knits us together, that there is something that is there ahead of time in us, and then there's something that happens between and among us. This is true not just of marriage, of course. This is true of all relationships. But there's something that happens in and among us as God is in us and between us, that is built inside of us and between us. That, to me, is more of a symbol or an indicator, I guess I would say, as opposed to, just coldly looking at the facts. And I'm not trying to say that these things have no importance, but if you just look at like stats about a person, like if I had a trading card, if I use a sports analogy, trading card about the person, I see their picture, I know their height, their weight, their whatever, their skills, their abilities, the type of job they have, those types of things, which I'm not trying to say are completely unimportant. And yet those are just facts about a person.
Yeah.
What's happening between us that is being built between us in our relationship? I think that I would recommend being open to that, and that is more indicative than just cold facts.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think looking at mine and Victoria's 9 years of marriage, we've grown so much closer together and have been brought so much closer together because of like all the stuff we've gone through.
Yeah,
like we've gone through so much together from just a lot of it good, a lot of it really, really challenging. Some of it was self-inflicted challenging, but that's really what helps bind things together. And I think looking at it from the intentionality side, there's a freedom that comes with that. Because like you can look at where there's prearranged marriages, not as much in American culture, but in other parts of the world where those are very successful and people report similar or greater levels of happiness.
Yeah.
But I think we need to approach it from... of course, I'm going to bring in a Tim Keller quote.
What?
I know. There you go. Got a couple of his books up here on the bookshelf. But he talks about the difference between pursuing holiness and pursuing happiness. And marriage is one of the prime examples he uses for this. If you pursue happiness at the expense of holiness, you get neither.
Yeah.
But if you pursue holiness on the way, you get happiness. That's a paraphrase of his quote.
Yeah.
But marriage is the same way. We are not designed for marriage to just make us happy. There is joy, there is happiness, there is fulfillment to be found in marriage. But I think we tend to look at marriage as like checking these things off of our list and getting what we need, quote unquote, out of it. And really it's, what is God's purpose? What is God's design?
Yeah.
So once marriage is there, God is going to continue to work in this and bring together. And it requires intentionality from both sides, that is the aim, that is the direction.
Yeah. I again, back to the math problem thing. Yeah. If we're just looking at the stats, we're going to miss a lot of that.
Yeah.
This is way oversimplification and may seem diminutive the way I'm saying it, but like, look for a traveling buddy. You're going on a journey of life together, on mission together. And as you just described, in any relationship, and even more so in one that is as exclusive and tightly coupled, if you will, as marriage, will encounter a myriad of joys and challenges.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And so, just not to be offensive to someone who considers height important, but like, how does height make a difference in that? So I'm not trying to diminish height. I'm trying to bring up.
Well, if your purpose is that you're going to be on a basketball team together, height is quite important.
Right. But to the average person, like, that will not make a big difference in the traveling partnership that you really want. And so I guess, so if I were to kind of boil that down into a tactical recommendation, it would be willing to let go of some of your checklist items. And be willing to engage in relationship, friendship with people who maybe don't meet all of those, to see what God does between you in relationship, what he's building between you, because that will reveal the aspects that we're talking about here, these traveling partnership, companion aspects that I think are really important, that may be undervalued.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely it. So This episode, we talked a lot about intentionality, like what is the goal, and don't vacillate between the two extremes, like find the happy medium there.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to dive deeper into that in our next episode and talk about expectations. Expectations in dating. So
Okay.
we talked about intentionality in dating. Let's talk about expectations in dating next.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's where I think we should go next.
Let's do it.
All right. See you next episode. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in today. Our team is made up of myself, Chris Conlin, and Mark Wavle, and our lead editor is Derek Donley. We're a crowd-funded nonprofit. Our free resources exist because of your generous support. To learn more about us or to check out classes that we talk about here, visit us at www.humanproject.us. Thanks for joining us on our mission to bring 1 million lives closer to the fullness of God's design.